One thing that's always been kind of curious, to me watching it, I'm sure I'm not the only person, is regarding, Isildur. When he was fighting Sauron, like, why didn't he just try to kill him with his hand, not his weapon?
I'm glad you asked because I really just wanted an excuse to tell this story. The answer is he didn't. This was one of those changes made by Peter Jackson, and you're right, it stands out as being too dumb to be plausible. I'm not sure what Sauron, or Jackson for that matter, was going for there other than a writing device to separate Sauron from the ring. Or maybe just because it looked cool.
I mean, aren't a lot of decisions in movies made simply because it looks cool?
Absolutely. In the Tolkien version, the fight is much different. Sauron was not the powerhouse killing machine that's depicted in the films, but he was still a very potent adversary. At the point this fight occurred, Sauron was fleeing from the siege of Barad-dûr with a small force and was intercepted on the slopes of Mount Doom by a small force including Isildur, Elendil, and some important elves including Gil Gilad and Elrond. During the fight, Gil Gilad and Elendil directly engaged Sauron and killed him. Gil Gilad was burned to death while doing so, as Sauron's touch could burn, and his sacrifice allowed Elendil to strike the killing blow with his sword Narsil. Basically, he backstabbed him.
Wait, so it was the backstab that killed him then?
Yep. However, during this death blow, Sauron was able to counterstrike Elendil forcefully enough that Elendil was also slain, breaking his sword under him. And it's a little unclear whether Sauron exerted that much energy to break Narsil, or if the sword had been weakened by striking Sauron.
Shit.
As an embodied Maya, basically a fallen angel, his form was so badly damaged that he couldn't hold on to it anymore. The thing that can be difficult to grasp without Sauron was that his potency as a Mire meant that he could retake bodily form at the price of expending some of his overall power. Doing so after being forcefully robbed of his previous one is a massive effort though, and beyond means of weaker Mire, such as Balrog, wizards and such, unless they are assisted by a greater power like God, as such was the case with Gandalf the White.
Wait, so you said like the weaker ones would be the wizards and the Balrog, right? So
Yeah, there's like a hierarchy to it.
I got it. I knew that, Gandalf and the Balrog were basically equals in terms of that. So you're saying Sauron is like the next step up. It's like higher angels and like lesser angels, basically.
Well, the wizards were voluntarily but truly weakened for their mission to prevent them from trying to face power with power, but rather to encourage the men and elves of Middle-earth. The Balrogs were basically lesser angels who followed and were corrupted by Morgoth, one of the original Maya, who sought to overthrow the other Mire who ruled over Middle-earth. And Sauron, who also became corrupted by Morgoth, was among the mightiest Maiar and greatest craftsmen. After Morgoth's defeat, Sauron had managed to create the One Ring as an anchor to Middle-earth, and this could assist him in resurrecting his former body, which before this battle he had already done once before in a different story. However, Isildur cut the ring off of Sauron's finger immediately after Sauron's defeat, making this much more difficult as the ring was separated from his body now. And so then Sauron's disembodied spirit fled into the east and took him centuries to rebuild a form, which gets more difficult each time. Especially since he didn't have the ring at his command, but while it still existed and was part of his very being, it anchored him there in Middle-earth.
That's interesting.
That's why at the end of Return of the King, when the ring was destroyed, Sauron lost all that was himself that he poured into the ring. It was gone, and he was horribly weakened beyond any level that he could recuperate. He couldn't even hold on to his latest form, as all things made with the ring's help fell into ruin, and now he didn't have enough power to even form another body.
And probably a stupid question, because you said this happened a few times, so this one you're saying is the what we see in the film.
Well, it's the same in the books, I believe, but he actually had a physical form. There wasn't a tower.
No, I mean like at the.
There was no eye.
I didn't know that actually. That's news to me. Maybe I heard that like once before. So you're saying in the book there was no tower. It was like actually similar to beginning of the movie, physical.
Yeah, he had a form, but it wasn't strong enough to really
Actually, like,
do anything with yet. Yeah.
I wonder why they would decide to go with the tower as opposed to like some shambling corpse.
I
that's
don't
trying to
know.
rebuild itself.
Honestly, I think it was cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool too. It's very menacing.
Yeah. And it definitely added some greater stakes to the journey overall, having that eye out watching, you know?
Yeah. Just to the point you were saying about the powerhouse thing. So, like at the beginning of the movie, when he's just like swinging his what was it, his mace around and knocking people back, like that's not how it was in the books.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because to my knowledge, I don't remember Tolkien saying anything about Sauron using any sort of weapon. And if he did, we didn't hear any mention of it. Sauron, despite being well versed in smithing weapons, never showed any interest in them other than crafting some magic jewelry. If Sauron didn't use weapons to fight, he probably used sorcery or his own physical strength, which it would explain why he killed Gil Gilad in such a specific way. And if you're not aware, Gil Gilad was pretty much the greatest king of all elves in history. There was actually a scene deleted from the final cut of the prologue. Gil Gilad was actually cast, costumed, and briefly seen in battle, but his death was cut due to being slightly irrelevant to the main story. And that decision was basically made because they didn't want to confuse the audience.
Yeah, I know the situations like that happen.
In the film, the scene was a writing device to separate Sauron from the ring and break Narsil. It's not necessarily a flaw, it works under the restrictions, but it's extremely awkward. I think it's just a result of compromises between the Tolkien version and what modern audiences would accept.
But why did Sauron pick the dude up, just randomly? He had the fucking, sure it was broken, but he had the damn broken sword in his hand, and of course that's how he cuts his finger off. But
I mean, we could attribute that to arrogance, but then again, we could make that assumption about any character acting senseless. The problem is, there's nothing prior to this that establishes his arrogance or a reason to be so. In fact, his army was losing the battle. He turned his back on thousands of men and elves to reach his ring gauntlet down to a man already wielding a broken blade. How did he think Isildur would react?
Yeah.
He cut his damn finger off. And then it kind of begs the question, he cut his ring off. Couldn't he just pick the ring back up with his other hand?
Yeah, put it on another finger.
Yeah. It's cool. At least something like this doesn't happen again.
You fool. No man can kill me.
You just have a Lord of the Rings lore channel,
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing a bunch of little stories and stuff like this, especially things that I find as a flaw initially, and then I find that it's just kind of too ambiguous to be conclusive on, right?
Yeah.
So I'll be exploring those just to, one, debunk them, and two, just kind of talk about the lore stuff of it too,
Yeah.